Hello everyone and welcome to this latest version of Beat Teacher Burnout. I'm so excited today because I've got a new guest on. So I don't know if you're feeling overloaded with your workload or how you're feeling today. Are you a leader, a teacher? Have you got a different role completely? I know there's parents who are listening here because this is relevant to everybody today. So I'm just going to say, Kate, introduce yourself and let us know a little bit about you.
Yeah, hi there. Thank you so much for having me on today. I'm Kate and I am a teacher. And I started a project a couple of years ago called What If Education, where I started to ask the questions. What if it was possible? What if we could make education happier, less stressful, and more relevant for everyone? And that everyone felt like a big, bold statement. But what I meant by that was, how could we do that for children and young people, for educators, for parents, for community, and for society at large? So some big questions to answer there.
Wow, certainly are. So obviously this is a podcast about beating burnout. Do you have experience as a teacher or leader in school of the burnout
I do.
experience?
Yeah, I do. And that's what led me to start to ask these questions. Or I think actually the questions came before, and I had those nagging at first, and then they sort of turned into burning questions that then led to burnout for me. And it's given me a really good sort of understanding of what that feels like, and also some of the solutions and ways to get around it.
So how long have you been teaching and when did the burnout come? What did it feel like for you?
So unofficially, I've been teaching since I was 4. I always say I had a great first cohort because Teddies give very little pushback, very compliant. My second year ECT was slightly harder because I had human pupils. They were my sisters, poor long-suffering sisters I've heard since. But no, joking aside, I started teaching in 2002. So around about 20 years in education in the primary sector. Sorry, what was the second part of the question there?
And then, so in 20 years in primary schools, so when did you start to notice signs that you were getting overwhelmed and something wasn't quite right?
Yeah, so I would say probably around a decade in to teaching, it started to feel very different from where I was at the beginning of my career, and sort of 10 years later, it felt different for me, but it also felt very different for the children and the young people as well. And so I started to see a shift that were making me ask a few questions. But then I would say sort of in another 5 years on from that, I started to see some big changes, and I was moving into a space where I realized that the education I was providing was making me move outside of my values far too often. And that was creating some conflict for me, and it was making me ask those questions in sort of a more pressing manner, I'd say.
When you say moving out of your values, what does that look like for you?
Yeah, so my values around education were very much that everything we should be doing would be about serving the children, and that would be the primary point for anything that we did. And yet I had quite a lot of questions around what was happening and what we were being asked to do with children, and how packed the curriculum and the timetable was with things that for me, when I pulled it apart, weren't serving our children, and actually looked more towards using the children as key performance indicators. And I had a lot of worries about that. It didn't feel fair. One of my core values is fairness. And I think what was really nice, if I speak to a lot of my past pupils, they always will say, we loved being in your class because you were always really fair. And I know that's a core value because that feels like such a warm thing for someone to say. You know, I love it when they say that to me, and when parents say that to me. And so with having that as such a strong core value, and then I looked at what we were doing and it didn't feel fair. So I really struggled with that.
Wow. And did it impact you physically, this sort of being outside your value sort of area, I suppose? Did that physically impact you?
It really did. I had for a long time a really bad neck, a really sore neck. And I never had time, obviously, to go and get it checked out because I was obviously working very long hours as you do. And I just sort of ignored it and ignored it and ignored it. But it was always there, and I just assumed I pulled a muscle, or I just had a sore neck. And it went on for months and months and months. And then, interestingly, when I left and I started to make the decision around that I was going to look for solutions, it disappeared. Within about a month, I hadn't been for any treatment or anything. It just disappeared. And that was really revelational to me, that actually it had been affecting me physically as well as emotionally, but I hadn't realized. And that made me understand why it's so important to deal with these things before it gets to that point.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. So, I mean, I know you've got a lot of ideas and solutions. So, do you want to, for those teachers, leaders who are listening to this, what would be your key solutions that you would share with people?
Yeah. So since I about 2022, I retrained as a coach. And so I'm now a qualified coach and I work in the coaching space within education. And I've had a really strong realization for solutions through using coaching. And one of those things is that I've completely changed my mind on workload reduction. I used to think that workload reduction was just about less. But what I've discovered through coaching lots of educators and through lots of the learning I've done is that actually workload reduction means completely different things to different people. And it's not always about less. Workload reduction is very much around, or positive workload reduction is around freedom, autonomy, and agency for your workload to look and feel like you want it to. And I know that it's impossible to say that it would be exactly how we would shape it. But I think if we can find ways to gain control of what our workload looks and feels like in the education space, we can move away from burnout. So for me, a solution in that is to get that message out to senior leadership and middle management to explain or look at different ways of approaching workload reduction and well-being. And a little story just behind that is that there was a real light bulb moment for me as I was coaching an educator who had said to me that as part of a workload reduction initiative in the school, there was a directive to reduce marking to almost minimum. And she said that she'd never felt more stressed or anxious. And I was immediately shocked because I wasn't expecting that response. Yeah. And I asked her to explain that to me in a little bit more detail. And she said that marking was really important to her. And it was how she knew exactly where her children were. It was how she communicated with her children. It was how she went in feeling like she knew what was happening in her lessons. It was her anchor, if you like. And she found marking therapeutic and wanted to spend her time doing it. And she said that she felt lost since the directive was not to do it. And when she was going into her reviews, it was, oh, you're still marking too much, you're still marking too much. And she found that really difficult. And that was such an eye-opener for me. And she said she would have much rather have choice over where she reduced her workload in other places and had the autonomy to mark. And I stuck with me so much. It was a really profound conversation.
I'm not surprised that stuck with you because I think a lot of people would be going, oh my goodness. But actually, isn't that a crucial thing for us to see that we are all so different? And,
Mm.
you know, you say that you knew you wanted to be a teacher age 4. I mean, I knew from age 10, and I've always wanted to be a teacher. And it's because it's a passion, isn't it? It is a
Yeah.
vocation, and there's something in our DNA for a lot of us, I think, that we want to make a difference to the children. And a lot of the leaders and teachers that I speak to, they're saying that the bit that they love the most of the role is being squeezed out. And
Mhm.
again, for different teachers and leaders, that it's a different part of their role because we're all different. So I think your point about autonomy is so important. And one of the things I have a burnout busting teacher's journal, and one of the weeks is on taking a tiny little bit of control back. What really matters to you, and what you could do even this week to just take a little bit of control back for you, so that
Mm.
you know that you are running a tiny bit of your show. Because I think for us in education now, there's very little control anymore. We're told very much what we have to do. And so it's about finding a little bit for you. And one teacher, I think I've said this before on the podcast, we worked out that one lesson a day, she was going to be super creative and it was going to be amazing. And the other lessons were going to be good, strong
Mhm.
good. But she couldn't be that amazing creative for every
Mhm.
lesson. So she was burning out. But actually, that's the bit she loved the most. So she could do it once a day. So it's
Mhm.
about finding what you need, isn't it, as an individual? Yeah. Come on then, Kate, give us some more solutions.
Well, actually, this next bit speaks perfectly to that, because one of the things that I've been really researching and learning lots about is how we can use large language model AI to help us with taking back some of that control. So for it to do some of the donkey work, some of the leg work, some of that sort of work that might not be bringing us the joy of the job, or actually helping us to be get back into that creative thinking space. And one of the things that it can be so powerful for is creating space in our timetables. Because I know, certainly my experience was, I just wanted more time. If only I had more time to put in a lesson that was all about relationship building and connection building, and that actually didn't speak to anything on the curriculum as such, but would underpin everything we did. And I had this sort of strong intuition that I needed to be doing more of that. But when I looked at my timetable, well, how am I going to fit that in? So what I've been doing is I've been working on how we can cherry pick to make it, because AI in itself can be very overwhelming. And I understand that actually that can be yet another thing that we have to think about and consider within, especially with children and young people starting to use it, and how we're going to keep up with them. And so what I'm loving doing and enjoying doing is cherry picking the bits that I think, right, this could be great for an educator, and then trying to cut off all the rest of the bits that are a little bit that might be really hard if you're already really busy to wade through. And one of those things is that you can use it to help you co-create, co-design a scheme of work or a set of lessons across 4 lessons instead of 6. Without any lost learning. You can even ask it to help you to make the lessons active. You can ask it to help me to make this bit really creative, help me to engage the disengaged learners, help me to put in activities that really speak to dyslexic thinkers. So you end up with this brilliant 4-lesson plan of work for that history topic or geography. You might have 4 hours instead of 6, and it's brilliant, and it's just as high quality, and you cover everything you need to cover and more, but you then have 2 hours left that become yours, that you've got control of, and that you can, with sort of every confidence, go, right, let's make these 2 hours about the other stuff that we never get to. And for me, that was self-directed play in year 6. So whilst I wasn't using AI then, because it was before I understood it or knew enough about it, I did do that in other ways. I really interrogated the curriculum, and I found ways to shorten my schemes. This is a brilliant way of doing it, and I wish that I'd had this available at the time. But what did for me, was it gave me those 2 hours to start to do things that I felt were so desperately needed.
Wow, I'm blown away by this. Amazing. So I mean, I've heard about, I mean, I use ChatGPT, but I have heard about it for support in schools. So if someone listening to this thinks, oh, that's really interesting, where do I start?
So the best place for me to start is that I actually do deliver training on how to use ChatGPT and other AI. So what I do is I do keep really short sessions, and I just pick 2 or 3 things that can have a real big impact. And I have a free video. So if anyone's listening to this that would like a copy of it, we can find a way for them. I'll leave my website, and you can go on, and actually on there, you can click on that and get a free copy of it. It's half an hour long, and it gives you 3 strategies that you can use to really make a difference, move the needle on what your workload looks like. The first one is getting ChatGPT to act as the professional that you need it to be. So all of those things that we need to be an overnight expert in as educators, with whatever challenge turns up at our door, we can use ChatGPT as a co-creator for solutions for those problems. So we're not having to do all the hard thinking ourselves, and we get lots of creative ideas. So to act as the professional you need it to be. To instruct it really powerfully, so how to do powerful prompts so that you get into the detail of what you need really quickly. And this is the best bit for me, the restrictions. So you can ask it to give you feedback and to give you advice and ideas for your context by saying, these are my restrictions. I have no funding. I have a small classroom. I have no access to outdoor environment for this lesson. I've got children with these needs. And ChatGPT will be ever optimistic, ever patient, and ever prolific in the ideas and options that it gives you. And for me, that's what we've been missing a bit. We can seek advice and we can take advice, but it's not always in our context, and it's really hard to then transfer it. But with this, you co-create for your environment. And that's worked brilliantly. I worked with an early years teacher recently, and that was just phenomenal in terms of what we could get for ideas for provision based on what their limitations were. And interestingly, we also got ChatGPT to act as a 4-year-old who just turned up to school and had, how did you feel and what did you need from your teacher? What did you need from your educators to help you to access the provision? And it was fantastic.
Oh my goodness, there's a whole world out there for us, isn't there?
Yeah.
Oh, Kate, that's amazing. So for people listening, how can they, what is your website? We will put it in the blurb, but what is it?
Yep. So you can find me at whatifeducation.co.uk and also on Instagram at what.education. What.if.education.
Okay, because I think people are going to want to come and find you. That's so exciting. Thank you so much. I feel like we've got really meaty solutions here that are really practical for people to go and try. So I'm really grateful for your time today, Kate. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much for having me on. It's just, I love talking about this stuff, and it's a dream, it's a passion of mine that we really do get to a space where education is happier, less stressful, and more relevant for everyone. And I absolutely believe it's possible. I think we need to do it below systemic change, because the wheels of systemic change just are achingly slow for me. So it's how do we crack this open at a grassroots level and start to make a difference for our educators who are doing such a brilliant job in our schools. And by educators, I mean everybody in the workforce.
Yeah. Amazing. Thanks, Kate. And thanks everyone for listening. Thanks for listening. I hope you took something of value from today. If you want to connect, I'm at rowenahicks.com, or I have a Facebook group, which is Preventing Teacher Burnout. So I look forward to connecting to you at one of those.